It had been a crazy day. Orbie discovered that jelly beans don't roll in a straight line. Katie found out that she could stack 15 pennies before they all fell over. And they both painted their faces and found out that if you wear a hat and a costume, nobody knows who you are. Unless, of course, they see Orbie's hands. Dad was fussing with his tie and Mom was just slipping into her shoes. Katie and Orbie sat on the edge of the bed. His name is Tom, Mom said, as she looked into the long mirror. Orbie made a bubbling noise that meant Mom looked beautiful. She sprayed a little perfume on, and Katie told her she smelled good, too. Mom thanked them both for their compliments. Dad spread his arms out and said, "How about me?" Katie and Orbie clapped their approval, and Dad took one of his famous bows. Downstairs, Dad helped Mom on with her coat. Orbie was ready to get his, too, when the doorbell rang. It was Tom. He said hi to Mom and Dad, and then he saw Katie and Orbie. "Hi, guys," he said as he moved into the house. Katie felt a bit shy, and Orbie just stared. He wondered why Tom wasn't dressed up, too. Mom and Dad introduced everybody and gave Tom a piece of paper to keep him by the phone. And then they started out the door. Orbie ran behind them, making all kinds of Orbie noises. Dad swept Orbie up in his arms, and as he walked back to Katie and Tom, he told Orbie that Tom was here to keep him company until they got back. Orbie looked at Tom. He was smiling and trying to be friendly, but that didn't matter to Orbie. Orbie just wanted to go with Katie's Mom and Dad. Dad explained that this evening was just for adults. It would be boring for Orbie. Dad placed Orbie beside Katie, and Katie took his hand. "We'll have fun," she said, as bravely as she could. Tom told them they would have fun, and Katie smiled at him. Orbie just looked down at his little spotted toes. Fun only happened when Mom and Dad were there. Tom smiled at them. "What games would you like to play?" he asked. Orbie just looked at him. Katie looked at Orbie. She thought for a moment, then she said that Orbie loved to play hide and seek. Tom winked at Katie, and then he looked Orbie right in the eye. He told Orbie that was quite a coincidence because when he was a little boy, he loved to play hide and seek too. Katie beamed at Tom. Tom was trying very hard to make Orbie happy, and Katie liked him for that. Tom stood up and looked around the room. This looked like a very good room to play hide and seek in. Katie nodded and looked at Orbie. Orbie was looking out the window, waiting for Mom and Dad to come back again. Tom told Orbie that the time would go more quickly if he played. Orbie sighed and turned back to the window. Katie could tell that Tom was trying to make Orbie happy, and she could tell that he was a little worried about Orbie. So she told him that she would play hide and seek with him, even if Orbie wouldn't. So they set about to have a game. As they played, Orbie stared out the window. He really was having trouble believing that Mom and Dad had left him at home. And just as he was about to let a little tiny tear trickle down his face, Katie laughed out loud so hard that Orbie just had to look. Katie was it, and there was Tom hiding by pretending to be a lamp. He had the lampshade on his head and was holding his arms out in a funny way. Katie fell to the floor with laughter. Katie was it again. Katie didn't mind, of course, because she wanted to see what crazy place Tom would hide in next. Now Orbie turned back to the window and was working on that little tear. He thought of why Mom and Dad left them at home. But right at that moment, he heard huffing and puffing. He tried to concentrate on how sad he was, but he had to turn around. This time, Tom was hiding on the couch. Actually, he was hiding in the couch. He had covered his feet and lower body with the couch cushions. But when he tried to cover his head with his face poking out, of course, because you should never cover your face with a pillow, the pillow kept flopping off. Finally, he was ready. Orbie tried not to watch, but he knew that Katie was going to love this. He knew that Katie would laugh right out loud when she saw the funny face Tom was making from under the pillows. So even while he was trying to be sad and not have fun without Mom and Dad, he did watch Katie come into the room and look for Tom. He watched Katie walk right by the couch without noticing, and Tom winked at him from under the pillow edge. Orbie smiled and tried very hard not to laugh. When Katie turned around and saw Tom, she shrieked with laughter and headed towards the home base. But Tom grabbed her and pretended to struggle to get out from under the pillows. Katie laughed and laughed, and she finally got away and ran home. Tom pretended to run for home and saw that it was too late, and he just collapsed in a big pile on the floor, groaning about how Katie won. Katie danced over to him and pronounced herself the champ. Now I have to tell you that all this time, Orbie was finding it more and more difficult to look out that window and feel sad. He tried a couple of times, but each time he did, he almost missed something, and he had to look back. Katie was now riding on Tom's back. Tom crawled over to Orbie and asked him if he had ever ridden on an elephant. Orbie made a sound that said, no. Tom told him that if he wanted to, he had better get on right away because the elephant ride was leaving. Orbie looked out the window and almost couldn't remember what he was looking for. He climbed on behind Katie as Tom announced, "You are riding Beverly, the bucking elephant, lady and gentlemen. Please hold on to the shirt. We don't like anyone to get hurt." Then Tom rose up on his knees and Katie and Orbie slid down his back. He rolled over and pretended to squish Katie and Orbie. Katie and Orbie laughed. Tom told him it was time for a snack and pajamas, a story and bed. He made Katie and Orbie a one-sided peanut butter sandwich and then added banana slices to make it look like a face. He made funny noises when they ate the eyes and the nose and the mouth. When they brushed their teeth, Tom used his finger and some toothpaste and pretended he didn't know how to brush. He kept missing his mouth and got toothpaste all over his face. And finally, when he read the goodnight story, he mixed up all the words and Katie and Orbie had to help him get it right. When Orbie and Katie were sound asleep, Mom and Dad crept in to give them a goodnight kiss. Orbie smiled on his hanger. He had a fabulous time with Tom and hoped that Tom would come again. And do you know that as it happened, he did?